Good day, listeners. Hope everyone is doing well. Today I'm going to bounce around a little bit, talk about a few different things that I want to not only dive into, but I guess just kind of get off my chest and evaluate a little bit. One thing I wanted to talk about that I actually put out a story that I found on the company social media platforms, and it was just a story that talks about how there's really no money in podcasts. And just to explain a little bit more, I'm not saying that people can't make money on it. I'm sure some people do. I know there's a lot of people with big names that do, like Joe Rogan, and I don't know, that's really one of the ones that come to mind. I'm sure there's more out there with successful podcasts, a lot of advertisers, things like that. But for the average person, such as myself, looking to start a podcast, it's really not, something for a revenue stream. I mean, put it this way. If one of my kids came to me and said, Dad, I'm going to stop working and just, do a podcast for a living, that's not going to fly. I mean, it's not going to cut it. They're not going to make a living doing a podcast. So you got to do it because you want it, if you got something to say. You're passionate about something, you want to talk about something, and you just want to connect with people. It's really a great platform for that. But if you rely on it, and if you're looking to make money on it, it's extremely hard. I mean, last I looked, I think they said the statistics was there's over like 900,000 podcasts. So just think about that. Out of all those podcasts, how many of those people are making a living just from doing a podcast? I know people even in radio that are on stations, they'll make a salary, but it's not like you're gonna, it's hard to break into that arena on every level. It's a tough arena to break into. And if you're doing a podcast where it's just something that, nobody's paying you for, you're just deciding to speak into a microphone and get your thoughts across, it's not really a moneymaker. So with that said, on my end anyway, that's the last reason why I wanted to start a podcast. I had no delusions and no expectations as far as financially that it would, bring anything in, and that's not what I'm doing here. That's why, you're not going to see ads in between the podcasts. It's not monetized in any way. There's no advertisements. If I recommend something or I want to talk about something, has zero to do with pay. Nobody's paying me for it. It's because I'm just making an honest recommendation or something. I just, if I'm recommending somebody, it's just for my personal view and my personal feelings on that, individual's quality of work or whatever it may be. And I'm going to get into that a little later because I'm actually going to talk about, a lawyer that I deal with that I would recommend, and because I do get a lot of emails on that, and then I respond to the email. I get a lot of listeners who would ask me, they have a problem, who should they contact, and so I'll address that as well. And on that note, it's not easy for somebody trying to find an attorney. When the time, unfortunately, if the time arises where an individual needs one, and they're faced with the justice system and they don't know where to begin. Nowadays everybody goes right on the internet and they'll start doing searches. But you got to be careful with that. I found out for myself when I was trying to secure counsel for certain individuals. You go to the internet, you do searches, but the internet's rough because you can get a lot of times it boils down to who's really good at marketing. Who's good at SEO. And when I mean SEO, that's just a simple way of putting it. It's, you're able to utilize keywords on your site so you come up high in the rankings. And a lot of times people will get impressed and they'll see certain websites, they'll see certain information, and they may, be really impressed with the website and the marketing aspect of somebody's credentials and somebody's information. They'll contact that attorney. And the presentation will go well, and then things just don't work out, for one reason or another. So it's really a hard specialized field to find an individual that suits your needs. I think I speak for, I would say, 99% of the defendants out there, if not 100, when I say if you want everybody, when they're looking for an attorney, I think what they want first and foremost is somebody who's going to fight for them tooth and nail. Somebody who's really going to work on the case, fight for them, shoot them straight, not try to pacify them just to make a quick buck. And what happens a lot of times, again, I've experienced it personally, and I've had a lot of listeners tell me about it, a lot of friends tell me about it, a lot of clients tell me that, during the presentation phase or the consultation phase, everybody talks a good game. That's one thing, to tell somebody you're going to deliver all of these, ways. They'll promise you, we could do this for the client, we could do this for you. Yes, we're very experienced in this. They could really give a great consultation, and you're sold on the consultation. You give the retainer, and now you have this individual working with you or for you. And the reality is, you really don't know somebody's work ethic and work capabilities until you start working on them, working with them. And a lot of times what I've noticed is a lot of defendants aren't really hands-on. Some are very hands-on. I spoke to a few, and I know a few that are very hands-on. They're very involved in their case. They want to see everything. They want to see what's going on. They want to know schedules. They want to be part of the discovery. And for a lawyer or an attorney who's not up to par, that's almost like a nightmare for them. Because now you have somebody who's calling you every step of the way as far as making sure you're up to speed, you're aware of certain facts. And I noticed, again, with certain attorneys personally, and I've had my share of where, I would secure an attorney, not for myself or, a family member, and, we would talk, and they're just not doing their job. It's all smoke and mirrors. And I have no problem letting them go. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, a lot of people, they get them on, and then, the negative part is you give them a retainer, now you have a problem with, trying to figure out, you let them go, then you got to try to, it's a bit of a headache. You got to try to work something out. If the person's not a gentleman and isn't honorable, then they don't want to give you your retainer back, and it's a whole whoop-de-doo. But you got to look at the lesser of the two evils. Do you want to be stuck with somebody who, when you really, pulled back the curtain, you saw that they're not backing up all the claims that they made during the consultation, and they're full of a lot of hot air? Do you want that representing you? Or do you want somebody who's really going to put in the work? Me, and I think everybody else, wants somebody who's going to put in the work. I mean, lawyers are not, they're not cheap. And if you get a good one, it's money well spent. I mean, you have somebody working hard for you. And I've met some great attorneys and quality attorneys. There's many in the profession that I feel are honorable people. They work hard. They care about the defendant. They care about the case that they're handling, and they're going to work for it. And that's all you could ask. You want them to have a high skill set, and you want them to devote what's needed to your case. And you don't want them blowing it off. But unfortunately, there's the other side of that, where you get the lawyers that it's all for the show. They promise you that, but really what their goal is, they just want to get in, make a quick buck, usually plea the client out. When they start off, and I'm sure a lot of people could relate to this. A lot of defendants could relate to this. They start off all hot to trot, to go to trial. We're going to trial. We know you're innocent. It's a bad case. And then the next thing you know, some lawyers are trying to talk you into taking a deal. Now, I'm not saying, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not saying sometimes that a deal isn't necessary. And I've spoke about that on past episodes, based on finances, based on the risk of getting a jury, which is, not an unbiased jury, one that already has you guilty before innocent. If you're dealing with a bad judge, for lack of a better term, if you're dealing with prosecutors that are able to really get away with things that normally they wouldn't get away with if you had a judge that was by the book. So those are all things you got to weigh, and I'm not saying a plea isn't a viable option. Unfortunately, a lot of times, it's a case of weighing what's a worse result. You have to take what's called, what I always say is the best of the worst. Sometimes you can only make a decision, what's the best of the worst of this situation? And then you got to make your decision based on that. But what I'm talking about, I'm not talking about that aspect. What I'm referring to is when you get an attorney on, and then, you really don't see them doing anything. It's a lot of BS. They're talking a good game, and some attorneys, they really like to, build up their own ego. And with anybody in life, an ego to me, it's a horrible trait. You're not impressing anybody. Nobody cares about your ego. Just do what you're hired for. Do what you have to do. Get the job done. It's really not impressive. If you have to go around saying how good you are and bragging, you're not that good. Your work product will speak for who you are. And it goes with the same with a person. Who you are as a person, your actions will speak for it, not you patting yourself on the back and talking about it. That's, if anything, it works adversely. It's a turnoff to me anyway, and I feel a lot of people feel that way. You don't want to hear somebody always bolster and bragging. It's just nonsense to me. Back it up, support it. And I met a lot of those type of people in my life, not just attorneys. Throughout business, throughout my personal life, a lot of braggers, a lot of people. But yet when you break it down, they really haven't accomplished much. They haven't done a lot. And when it comes time to work, it's the last thing they want to do. They'd rather, I don't know what they'd rather do, but it's not working. So my point is, defendants really have to take the time before you secure an attorney. And what's scary is a lot of times, you're pressured. You get arrested, you hit with the indictment, and you don't have much time to make a decision. You don't have really a lot of time to weed through the vast world of different, attorneys. And you don't have time to do your due diligence and inquire. And, one thing I would like to do, if I had the time in the future, when I'm asked to be part of a case, I'd like to call past clients. I'd like to do my research just to get a feel of what this person was about. Sometimes you're under the gun and you have to make quick decisions and you just don't have the time for that. But in an ideal world, that's really what needs to be done. You got to really talk to see the results, see what they've produced, see how long they've been practicing, see if they have a big gap in between cases, if they have repeat clients or they have clients who got rid of them, because that's another good indicator. I mean, if somebody's good, you're going to keep using them. If you get lawyers that are turning over clients and they're bouncing from client to client, and if, somebody, unfortunately, they may have a few times that they were arrested, let's say through the years. And if they have, a different lawyer, that'll tell you something in itself. Why aren't they using that same guy? So you got to really ask these questions and inquire about it. And what bothers me with that whole realm, I don't like being fooled, I guess you would say. I don't like when somebody, just in general, whether it's in that world, I don't like somebody telling me something and then doing the complete opposite. I'm the type of person, if I shake your hand and I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And if I can't do it, I'm going to be very honest with you, and I'm going to say, listen, this is everything I did to try to accomplish what I promised you. It didn't happen, but I'm going to keep going, but I'm going to talk you through it. I'm not just going to keep trying to bluff you and BS you. Either I can handle the task or I can't handle the task. And unfortunately, a lot of times you'll get attorneys that it's all talk. It's no work, it's all talk. They'll tell everybody they're working all this time. I'm working thousands of hours because, of course, they want to justify retainers and justify billings. But a smart defendant and a smart team will be able to track that. I mean, you want to see that. You want to see the work product. Show me what you've been writing. Show me what you've been investigating. Show me what parts of the discovery you opened and went through. You can track it. It's not, just random thoughts that they have and they're writing down. That it all has to be tracked. The work product, you're able to look at and you're able to verify it. So for the defendants out there, just make sure you have a better handle on that, because this is your life and you don't want to get into a situation where you're dealing with somebody who's just in it to make a quick money grab. You really want somebody who cares about the case, somebody who's devoted, and somebody who believes in it. And they don't. they don't have to believe. I'm not getting into. I know a lot of attorneys they feel their client's guilty and this. I'm not getting into that, but believe in the case in the sense that you're going to work on it and you're going to do your best to give your client the best shot at a fair case, at a fair trial, and to give them the best defense you're capable of giving. It's like with anything else. You take on a job, I always was raised and I always believe you work at it 100%. You don't half-ass anything. You don't give minimal effort. You don't give half effort. You give it 100% or just don't even touch it. If you can't devote that time, don't touch it. I've come across some lawyers, they'll try to take as many cases as they can, and just common sense would dictate they have all these cases. How are they going to devote the time needed to your case? I'm a business owner. I own a couple businesses, and each one of my businesses, it's a little bit different as far as the clientele. But one thing that my clients always know, and I've been able to build a pretty solid reputation. I mean, I have. I'm not going to get into it, but I built a good reputation. If you research certain things, you'll see it for yourself. But my point just is, whenever I told somebody I'm going to do something, I did it. And if I couldn't do it, I was up front with them and told them I couldn't do it. And if I was going to try to do it and I wasn't sure of the outcome, I was up front. And that's the biggest problem just nowadays in general. People don't communicate. If you're honest with somebody and you're open and you walk them through things and you keep them in the loop, people have to respect that because you're not lying to them. You're keeping them up to speed on everything. You're being honest with them, and you're putting in the time. And a lot of the, unfortunately, what happens is some of these lawyers, and speaking with friends, speaking with even I've dealt with it personally. There was actually an article written in one of those online blogs where they were talking about how I got rid of a few lawyers for my father's case. And I own up to that. And the truth is there was different reasons, but I just felt, I'm very hard to work with in this sense. If you're going to try to BS me and you're going to try to tell me things that aren't true that I could find out very easily whether you're doing your job or not, then you shouldn't work for anybody I care about. You shouldn't be part of my team. Because I'm going to call you on it every step of the way. If you work hard and you just look me in the eye and you tell me you're going to do what you said you're going to do and you're going to follow up on it, I'll be the most supportive partner and team member you can have. And that's really what my firm does. When I'm not personally vested in it, it bothers me, don't get me wrong, but I have no say as far as who's part of the team and who's not. My firm's hired for a job. I do the job to the best as I could do it and my team could do it. And I try to support the defendant to the best way. And that's one advantage. When I'm involved in a case, I talk a lot to the defendants and I make sure everybody's on the same page. Sometimes lawyers get tied up. They're not able to update. So I make sure everybody's on the same page. So we're all working in unison. We all know what's going on. And that could be either the best friend of an individual or it could be their worst nightmare. It could be their enemy, depending on what they're trying to do. If they're trying to just make a quick money grab and not earn their money, then I'm going to be very difficult and I'm going to probably be one of your worst clients, quote unquote, or your worst co-workers or your worst support system, whatever you want to call it. But if you're doing your job, and we're working together in tandem like a well-oiled machine, that's what you got to go by. And, time and again, I see defendants getting very frustrated. They're dealing with the counsel that is, they promised them one thing, and then as things start moving along, they're realizing the service they're receiving and the level of competency that they're witnessing is not up to the standards that was represented upon initial consultation. And to me, there's no other way of painting that than, you're trying to pull the wool over somebody's eyes. If you represent yourself at a consultation completely different than how you do when the work starts, then that, you're conning somebody. That's how I see it. I don't know how else you could see it. But, you're basically putting on a con. Through the years, I've had clients with me in my other business for 20 years, 15 years, And they stay with me, not because I'm the cheapest company, not because of service. It's all about service. When you're in a service industry, and anytime you're dealing with people, it's a form of service. When you're a lawyer, you're servicing the client. I know, going back to my egos, a lot of times, some of these attorneys forget that they're servicing the client. But that's the fact. The client's paying you. You're working for the client. So put the ego aside and get the job done. You're not that good if you have to constantly talk about how good you are. If you have to brag how good you are, you're really not that good, because just do your thing. If you're good, the results will tell that. The decisions will tell that. But having to say it, that's not going to fly. And, I don't want to get into detail with specific attorneys. I don't really operate that way. I don't go to, one of the attorneys I was working with that I had to let go actually ran to an online blog and wanted to talk about what took place. And I just found that actually comical, where I then had to write the blog and put the record straight, because unfortunately there was a lot of BS. But, that's, again, I don't want to get into that. That's not my style. I don't do things like that. But one thing I will do that everyone should be aware of, I'm always going to address, if I do see BS at my expense or at my family's expense or at a defendant's expense that I'm hired to service, if I see lies that take place at their expense, I'm definitely going to address it. And it may be against my better judgment. Sometimes people say, you have to ignore things. That may be, but that's not my nature. It's just not. If I see somebody lying about facts or lying about, supposed deals that the defendant was offered that they were never offered, you get a lot of crazy lies. To make themselves look good, they'll try to act like they had these crazy deals thrown their way just to put it out there. And, the client didn't want to take the deal, but that was the deal I could have got them. None of that, if I hear that kind of BS, I'm going to call it out. And I'm going to tell everybody I know that's an out-and-out lie. And I'll tell the person right to their face, because when I talk to somebody, I talk to them to their face the same way I'll tell it here on the podcast. I'll tell it to somebody asking me. I don't say one thing one day and another thing another day. I say it how I have to say it, and I don't care who likes it, who don't like it, who agrees with it, who don't. That's the way I feel, and I'm going to make it known. Some people need to be liked, and I'm not one of those people. I don't need to be liked. I don't need. Fortunately, I've built a solid friend base, professional base, family base on how I operate and my core beliefs. And those are the people I want around me. I don't need to be liked, by individuals who don't agree with my philosophies and this. I couldn't care. Doesn't mean anything to me. But I will call you out on your BS. So when I do see lies, and, I've had a lot of interactions. I've never been on social media, and that may have been a mistake that I started getting. I've been on it for my business, my different businesses. I've always had but I usually had my staff run that. They'll run the social media. On the Justice Tech Pro side of it, I actually took more of a handle on that because I was interested more in it. I liked I just like that sometimes, the technology aspect of it, creating banners, putting things up, some promotional. I like doing videos. Sometimes if people follow the social media, they'll see videos I put up. I like a lot of quotes. Sometimes quotes, speak to me, and I just like to put that out there. So that's what I have more of a handle on. But the downside of social media, I tell you, you see a lot of nonsense going on. I mean, you see people, the way they talk on social media, one's bragging more than the other. It's actually insane. Between the podcasts now, between the Instagram accounts, it's like one big bragging party. Everything people supposedly did, who's crazy, who's not crazy, who's trying to turn over a new leaf, but yet talking about all the crazy things they were and how tough they were. I mean, it's an upside down world online, social media. And now I remind myself why I was never on it. They'll have social media wars. People going back and forth, posting things back. Think about that. Grown men having social media wars. You have something to say to somebody. You sit down. You tell them what you got to say. Right, wrong, or indifferent, air it out face to face. You know, blog about it or post about it or do, videos about it. When I have something to say, I tell them directly. And the bad part is you have no choice sometimes. There was a couple of lies that I saw online where it affected, case I was on or my father's case, and I addressed it directly. Now, was that the right move? I have no idea. And under whose eyes is it right or wrong? I really don't care. But like I said, if I see a lie taking place, I have to address it. Is it a character fault? Probably. Maybe. It may be just an unnecessary aggravation. But I don't know. I'm thick-skinned. Those kind of things don't really aggravate me. It would aggravate me more not to address it. It would aggravate me more just to allow that lie to go on. But there's a lot to keep up with. You got to pick and choose your battles because it's endless. I mean, the amount of nonsense that's out there on the internet, it's endless. So I don't go looking for it, but when I do see it or if somebody sends it to me, unfortunately that happens sometimes. Somebody will send it to me because I'm not really active on those things. And then I have to address it because I just can't let a lie go. I got to address it with some facts. So, just kind of wrapping this segment up, the defendants need to understand, they really need to, and I've said this many times, and whether, you're building a team for your defense, you're bringing a firm like my firm, or you're bringing another firm, whatever it is to build your defense, just make sure every party you bring in is going to earn the money you're paying them. And even if you have, assigned counsel, you have an aide or you have legal aid, they're still getting paid. And I know, unfortunately, you can't control it as much because you're not paying them, but you just want somebody to work hard. You want somebody, when you're paying for your defense, especially when you're paying for your defense, you get to dictate who your team members are. So just make sure you choose wisely. You want somebody who's really going to work for you. You want somebody who's going to be honest with you, upfront with you. And I touched last time on the, conduct in the courtroom and conduct, when the defendant, gets a little taken back if they see an overly friendly relationship between, say the defense and the prosecutorial team. And I'm not saying, and I said this, and I don't want to go back to it because I already discussed this. I'm not saying, there shouldn't be professional courtesy. Absolutely. You're in there. But I think when you step into that courtroom, it's like almost like a battle arena, and you're in there and just focus on your defendant and let your defendant know that you're there to fight and leave the politicking for outside the courtroom. I mean, negotiations could take place outside of the defendant's earshot. And you could do, have your conversations and maybe try to work on certain things. But in the courtroom, I've spoken to families and also personally, when you see it, it's a bit of a turnoff. I got to be honest. When you see that friendly banter back and forth, and then all of a sudden, as soon as court is in session, the other side is ripping the defendant to shreds, sometimes stating lies, stating inaccuracies, falsities, and then, you're sitting there and you have a flashback of 10 minutes earlier of your attorney, buddies with with the individual. So it's just not a good look. So I would refrain from that, And a few positive things throughout this venture, of Justice Tech Pros. I've met some very solid individuals, some very solid attorneys. One specifically that I personally highly recommend on both a personal level and a business level his name is Anthony DiPietro, and he's in White Plains. So if you look him up, you just got to put in Anthony DiPietro in White Plains. He's actually going to be on the podcast in the future, so we're going to have a good, conversation. You'll be able to get a feel of how his work ethic and what he does and what he focuses on and what he specializes on. But the guy really is aces. He's a workhorse. He's extremely well-versed, well-spoken, well-written. His paperwork's great. His I've seen him cross-examine, did a phenomenal job. Actually won, a huge count on my father's case based on his cross-examination. So he really is he's a phenomenal attorney, and I think he'll be a great guest on the show. I think people will enjoy, our back and forth. We're friends as well, so it should be a good, entertaining conversation for the listeners. And I have a couple other attorneys that I do recommend when I get certain emails. And again, you could feel free to email the show. Email the podcast email. It's podcast@JusticeTechPros. My staff will forward it to me. And, sometimes I'm unable, honestly, to recommend anybody because of your location. So I appreciate you reaching out, but, I always try to at least talk to my network and try to make a positive match and go from there. And when I give a recommendation, it's because I believe in it. I don't just give recommendations. I don't get nothing for recommendations. I don't get finder's fees, referral fees. I don't get anything like that. There's no agenda to it. There's nothing behind it. I just do it to make sure whoever's calling me, whoever has the trust to put into me, I'm going to do my best to make sure whoever I do recommend is somebody that I personally would use if I ever had to, or somebody I would want a family member to use. That's how I try to gauge my recommendations. So that's pretty much it on that segment and what I wanted to touch on. And I think the moral of the story with that portion is, just make sure you're involved in your case, and make sure if you have the time and you're not really pressed for time to hire an attorney, please do your due diligence. Talk to past clients. That's a huge indicator. Look at don't just go by their website. The website, websites are great, but anybody can make a website. I mean, as I said earlier, I'm very tech savvy. You could go to GoDaddy. You could buy the domain name. You can make a nice website. You got to do a little research and talking to people, pulling a few cases, pull their motions. That's another good indicator. You could pull their motions, see their written works, see what they submitted to the judge. You get a good feel of their style, how they argue a case. You could even get a transcript of a hearing, see their cross-examination, see how they performed in the courtroom. If you have the time and you have the ability, I highly recommend really devoting the time necessary before you make the decision to hire somebody. Just make sure they're what you need, and they're going to perform as they promised. It's vital, because too many times I see defendants getting stuck with somebody and they're just not happy. And it's hard. It really is a hard situation to be in, because if, you're tapped out financially, they really have you. They got you in a bad position. You're stuck with them and you got to deal with them. And it's a decision that could potentially affect your life dramatically. So it's just very important, and try to make sure that you exhaust all efforts when you are performing your backgrounds and you are performing your investigative work to bring on somebody to defend you. Just try to exhaust every avenue. Another genre that I wanted to hit on is, people talk about discrimination in the system, and it does exist on many levels, whether it's your skin color. I've spoken about that many times. But what people don't realize, a huge discrimination that a lot of people don't care about, because they have the mentality, which isn't how the law works, mind you, but they have the mentality, the general public, and they're part of this problem. They have the mentality that if you have a label, whether it's an organized crime label or whatever kind of label you want to give somebody, if you're not guilty of the crimes you're charged with, you're guilty of something. So when somebody has that in their head, that's a dangerous combination in the justice system. And I've experienced it on a different level. To get into a little bit of what I'm talking about, and I believe I touched on this a bit in the past, but they have, sometimes when you're on a case, you'll look for support from different organizations. There's a lot of organizations out there. There's organizations, for rights. There's organizations for justice. There's a ton, which is a great thing. There's a lot of them. But I'll tell you, one thing I noticed. I tried contacting a lot of these organizations throughout the trial for support, and to have them actually review certain things and just to look at certain things, because I knew what I was witnessing was not how the law should work, and I knew something was wrong. And I just wanted somebody much more educated and more versed than myself to look at it, and I know they're part of the panel, just to see if there was anything there. All of these organizations pretty much blew me off. Now, I'm not stupid. The reasons were good and justified of what I was giving them. I mean, they were important constitutional reasons. But I know why they were blowing it off. Whenever something has an organized crime label to a case, this had to do with my father's case, where I was looking for certain support from different organizations. And every email I sent, there was always an excuse or something. Not one took it on. And again, this wasn't grasping at straws issues. These were legitimate constitutional issues that I just wanted, and it wasn't even for me, it was for part of the team. General counsel wanted it as well. I was just the intermediary reaching out to try to see who would take an interest. And we got a few who gave us lip service where, yeah, we're going to, but nothing ever panned out. And I'm just telling you, one of the biggest discriminations that take place is if somebody has that label attached to them. These organizations that are supposed to be for justice, supposed to be for what's written in the Constitution, supposed to be for what's right and all that, they don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. Now, how does that make sense? It all goes back to my theory of, my want, I should say, for the image of Lady Justice being blind to actually mean something. And when these things take place, it just proves the point that she's far from blind. And individuals involved, they have a hard time separating that. They may feel a certain way about a defendant or about what they read in newspapers, and they don't want to touch it. Rather than take the time to look at the facts, to look if there was a constitutional problem, to field the cause, to analyze it, they pass. And then you see them take these other cases and offer amicus briefs and opinions that are such weaker situations, that aren't as strong, that aren't such a strong, important, and vital issue that could actually set precedent. I mean, some of the issues we were raising, and obviously now at the appeal level, we're going to raise them. But some of these issues that were being raised prior, because I was trying to stay a little bit ahead of the curve, are serious constitutional issues that could have set some kind of precedent if they dove into them to get clarification. And they wouldn't touch it. And again, I'm not stupid. I know why they wouldn't touch it. They'll say whatever they want. They'll come up with excuses. But those are the facts. And the public needs to understand, regardless of your bias, it is a form of discrimination. I know you don't want to believe it is, and some people just feel, well, if they have that label, they're guilty. You can't think that way. If you want to live in a system where everybody's entitled to a fair trial, you can't think that way. What's written on the Supreme Court building is equal justice under the law. People need to understand that. And that's even better than innocent to proven guilty. It's equal justice under the law. You just simply want, it doesn't say anything about equal justice as long as you don't have a title, equal justice as long as you're not accused of being in some kind of group or enterprise. It doesn't say that. It's a very generalized statement of equal justice under law. And a defendant just simply wants to receive that. And every defendant's entitled to receive that. And when you get stripped of that, simply because of a label or a title, there's a problem. And a lot of citizens don't see that because they're not, they look at it, well, I don't have that problem, so it doesn't affect me. Somebody shouldn't be a member of an organization if they don't want to have that problem. And again, they should realize it's not illegal. Even if you want to accuse somebody of being, and I spoke about this, it's not illegal to be a member of whatever organization somebody's being accused of being a member of. That's not illegal. But the common citizen don't want to understand that or grasp it, or they're not aware of it. And the public needs to be aware of it. That is not a crime. You still have to commit a crime. You could be part of these, these organizations that they're trying to say you're a part of, but yeah, it's not illegal to do that. So for somebody to not even evaluate a case, not even evaluate legitimate constitutional errors or concerns, and I'm not even saying whether I was right or wrong, we're going to find that out now at the appeal level, but to not even evaluate it and devote the time. And what's funny is how I knew the reason why they denied it was related to the genre of the case, was because initially I would be a little vague when I would explain it, and I would just focus on the issue. I would say there's a defendant, this is the issue going on, and they were all very intrigued at inception. They would all email me back, well, that's a great issue, that does sound like something that's a problem, that does sound like a constitutional issue. Then once I sent, or I should say I had the attorney send the actual case information with the docket and with the defendants' names, that's when you didn't get return emails, or you got excuse emails, or you got lip service. So what does that tell you? Anyone with half a brain would realize, well, why would they be so interested before all of this information was divulged? It's not like the facts changed. They had an overview of what the problem was, or what the clarification was we were trying to receive. And I think, honestly, that disturbed me more on some level than not getting a fair trial from the judge. And I'll tell you why. If you're faced with a judge that just doesn't want to give you a fair trial, that's one individual. It's hard to overcome if they have their mind made up. It's hard. When you're dealing with these organizations, you're dealing with panels, you're dealing with board members, you're dealing with a diverse range of personalities, diverse range of education, diverse range of views. So that tells me that the majority knocked these things down based on not wanting to touch anything related to a specific genre that they, for some reason, just didn't want to touch. Now, how do you get somebody a fair trial when these organizations that are supposed to be for the people, defending people, making sure that there is equal justice under law, if you have organizations on that level not giving somebody the benefit of the doubt and at least reviewing it, I would much rather, honestly, I'm a very rational individual, I would much rather they review it and say, you know what, this is a non-issue. There is no constitutional problem here. There is no error. You don't really have an issue. I would much rather have gotten an email like that than get blown off and just be like, oh, we don't have the time. I don't know. It was all ridiculous excuses. I don't remember. But it was nothing viable. It was nothing legitimate. So that's why, they kind of tipped their hat to exactly the reasoning and the rationale of why they didn't even want to touch it. And I think that disturbed me more, because these are organizations that market, promote, they brand themselves, how they're for the people, they're for justice. All they want to do is get justice. They want to make sure that the Constitution's followed. All of these great keywords, all of these great taglines to bring the public in, to get support, to get membership. And then when the time comes to help somebody that needs the help on valid, specific constitutional problems, they don't want to touch it. And why don't they want to touch it? They could paint it any color they want, but the bottom line is they're discriminating. They're discriminating because they don't want to touch it because there's a label associated with the defendant. And that's the facts right there. I mean, I have the emails to show the exact, I could show, no exaggeration, if I'm not mistaken, I believe I contacted over 20 different organizations. I've even contacted a ton of law professors and this, and I've had some that were, the law professors, a few actually did respond back and give me some insight. But I wanted to kind of, again, when you're going for an amicus brief, you want an organization, rather than an individual sometimes. So that was really more what I was looking for. But the organizations, not one would at least sit with the team, evaluate, and tell us if we had a legitimate issue. And these were issues that, I mean, put it this way, it stumped all of the, we had a lot of attorneys because all the defendants, we'd have defendant meetings. So all of the attorneys involved, none of them could really answer some of these issues. So these were legitimate issues, whereas we needed clear clarification and guidance. So there was obviously something there. And at the level of the organizations, they wouldn't touch it. And why wouldn't they touch it? Because the bottom line is they were discriminating against the defendants. They would not touch a case that had any kind of label. Now, how is somebody supposed to get a fair trial when these organizations, who are supposed to be for the people, for justice, making sure that justice is given equally, given to all citizens, how is someone supposed to get a fair trial when that's what they're up against on a level of organizational format and organizational reviews? If they're hitting discrimination on that level, don't you think they're going to hit it on the jury level? And that's a problem. People can't have that mentality. Well, if they're not guilty of this, they're guilty of something. Okay, you could believe that. I'm not saying that's not your right to believe that. You could believe that. But if you believe in the law and you believe in the Constitution, you have to apply it. You have to make sure that the charges that somebody is being faced with is what they're guilty of. That's what you have to make sure of. You can't just lump it all together and say, well, they may have did whatever in the past, so even though they're not guilty of this charge, we could find them guilty in good conscience. No, you can't. You're not doing your job. And that's dangerous. It's setting a nasty tone for the future. It's setting a very dangerous tone for people, because if that's how it starts going, just think about the ramifications of that. People could start getting indicted under, the belief that they're not a good person, and they'll just get indicted with charges, and they'll start getting found guilty because, well, we don't think they're a good person. Even though they didn't commit these crimes, we're going to find them guilty. I mean, the logic is insane, and when you look at it like that, it doesn't make any sense, and people understand that. But for some reason, there's this internal rationale that some people have that they feel, well, that's if they want to be part of this enterprise, that's something they signed up for. They're going to be found guilty of it. Okay, no. How about be found guilty of a crime you actually committed? That's the key. You got to find somebody guilty for something they actually did, and that's where the disconnect is. And I think I covered it as much as I wanted to. I just really wanted to talk to you guys about those two things, and I guess just kind of evaluate it a little bit, even kick it around. When I speak about these things out loud, it even gets me going, because I start to get some ideas about it, and I like to express it into the microphone and into the listeners. On another note, originally I was going to be on the Frank Morano show Tuesday morning. I mean, you could see I'm a night owl too. I think it's like 2:40 a.m. now. But he has a night show. It's called The Other Side of Midnight, and I'm going to be on actually Monday now. We changed it to Monday, which I believe is the 19th. Yes, Monday the 19th between 1 and 5 a.m. A lot of people aren't up, but I'll repost it, and if nothing else, just tune into his show. If you're up, you can't sleep, it's a good show. It's on 770 WABC, and Frank's a real good guy. Every time I'm on, we have a good conversation. I think it flows pretty well, and we have a good discussion. So I'm looking forward to that. So again, it's the 19th on the Frank Morano Show, The Other Side of Midnight. And that's it. I appreciate the listeners. I mean, the listeners keep growing. And, I think, again, like I always say, I don't know how much longer. Right now, I'm on a roll, so I'm not burning out anytime soon. I still got a lot of things to say. Maybe one day I'll have enough. And when I'm bored and it's 2 a.m, the best way to deal with it is sometimes talking to the microphone. So that's what I'm going to keep doing until I don't. That's it for now. Until next time.